Her body was found Wednesday morning in an alley near 41st and Hampton. But just hours before that, her 7-year-old son was found roaming the streets covered in blood. And tonight, that boy's grandma is speaking out about the tragic death of her youngest daughter.
I want to see justice for my daughter. I want to know who did this.
Wednesday, Misty Raymond says her heart stopped when she saw a picture of her 7-year-old grandson circulating online saying he was found by Milwaukee police.
Everybody kept saying, Misty, isn't this Aniya's son? Isn't this your grandson? And when I took a look at that morning, right away I got a hold to 5th District because that's where they took him.
Milwaukee police say the boy was found at 4 a.m. near 9th and Keefe. The family has asked us not to share his picture for his safety.
They said they found him wandering the streets with blood on his clothes and no shoes on.
5 hours later, Milwaukee police found Raymond's daughter and the boy's mother, Aniya Raymond, shot and killed in an alley near 41st Street in Hampton.
They said she was shot multiple times and just discarded like trash.
As the Milwaukee Police Department continues to investigate, Raymond is demanding answers for what happened to her daughter and her grandson.
Scary, because he was always with his mom. He was always with her. He's autistic. He was never not with her.
Uneasy as she's left with endless questions and grief for her daughter, who she says was a mother of 3 who loved her kids.
Imagine a cold Milwaukee morning, the kind where the streets feel unusually quiet, and the world hasn't quite woken up yet. A resident steps outside, expecting just another ordinary day, only to freeze at the sight of a small boy wandering alone. No jacket, no shoes, just a pair of pajamas. He isn't crying, but he looks lost, confused, and unable to say where he came from. Neighbors rush toward him, calling out gently, trying to figure out how he ended up outside in the early morning chill. But the little boy can't answer. He's nonverbal. All they know is that he's alone, and clearly far from where he should be. No one knows it yet, but this child is carrying the first clue in a mystery that will break hearts across the country. Hours later, as police begin searching the neighborhood, another call comes in. This time, it's something no one is prepared for. In a nearby alley, behind a row of duplexes, officers discover the body of a young mother, her life taken far too soon. And when investigators piece things together, a chilling truth emerges. The little boy found wandering alone is her son. Her name is Aniya Raymond, just 29 years old, a mother who, according to friends, lived for her child. A woman who posted cryptic messages online in the days leading up to her death. Messages that hinted at fear, at frustration, at someone who felt cornered in a way she couldn't fully explain. Police quickly realized this isn't a simple tragedy. This is a puzzle filled with unanswered questions. Why was Aniya alone in an alley? How did her son end up blocks away? And what exactly was she trying to warn the world about in her final Facebook posts? Before the day is over, detectives uncover more. A man she'd known, someone she was trying to distance herself from, becomes the center of their attention. As the investigation unfolds, the story spirals into themes of danger, trust, and the heartbreaking lengths a mother will go to protect her child. This is the story of a young woman whose life ended in a moment of senseless violence, and a little boy who survived only by a twist of fate. A story that shocked an entire community and left a trail of digital breadcrumbs that Aniya herself posted before everything changed. Tonight, we're going to walk through the final hours of Aniya's life, the clues she unknowingly left behind, and the truth that eventually came to light. Because this isn't just another case. This is a reminder that the people who seem the strongest on the outside can be fighting the quietest battles behind closed doors. And when you hear what really happened, you'll understand why the world is still asking how this could have been prevented, and why Aniya deserved so much more. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. The story of Aniya Raymond begins long before the day everything changed. It begins in the city she called home, Milwaukee, a place that shaped her, challenged her, and still held a piece of her even when life grew heavier than anyone around her realized. Friends remember her as the kind of woman who could walk into a room full of strangers and somehow make it feel like family. A mother whose love was loud, visible and unwavering. A young woman who laughed with her whole heart and loved with depth, even when her world didn't always love her back the same way. People say motherhood changes a person in ways only time can reveal. For Aniya, it was everything. Her son was her joy, her motivation, and her anchor. Being his mother wasn't just a title. It was the most important role she had ever stepped into. Family members often said she had a tenderness that made her both soft and strong. There was no challenge she wouldn't face for her child, no obstacle she wouldn't push through if it meant he would smile at the end of the day. But behind the light she carried, there were quiet battles, the kind of battles people only sense from fragments, from a tone in someone's voice, or a pause that lingers a moment too long. On social media, Aniya sometimes posted messages that hinted at stress, frustration, even fear, not in a way that drew immediate alarm, but in a way that suggested she was carrying burdens she rarely named. These posts weren't long or dramatic. They were cryptic, brief, but emotional enough that once everything unfolded, they gained a whole new meaning. Before that moment, though, most people saw a woman trying her best to build a stable life. A woman who worked, who cared for her home, and who tried to create joy for her son every chance she got. She spent time with him, doted on him, and tried to give him the gentle structure he needed. In many ways, she was like countless young mothers, balancing responsibilities, relationships, dreams, and the unspoken weight of survival. There was someone else who had grown close to her, a man named Kevin Griffin. Their relationship wasn't the kind of love story that's easy to explain from the outside. To some, he was simply someone in her orbit. To others, he was a complication. What is clear from the investigation is that he was in her life during a time when she struggled with emotions she didn't always share. As authorities later revealed, Kevin had been in frequent contact with Aniya. Their communication, whether through calls or messages, created a closeness that didn't always bring peace. Police would later point out that some of Aniya's final social media posts seemed to reflect emotional tension, like a woman trying to hold herself together even as something around her felt unstable. Still, from the outside, no one imagined the storm that was gathering.
Milwaukee police say the boy was found at 4 a.m. near 9th and Keefe. The family has asked us not to share his picture for his safety.
They said they found him wandering the streets with blood on his clothes and no shoes on.
5 hours later, Milwaukee police found Raymond's daughter and the boy's mother, Aniya Raymond, shot and killed in an alley near 41st Street in Hampton.
They said she was shot multiple times and just discarded like trash.
As the Milwaukee Police Department continues to investigate, Raymond is demanding answers for what happened to her daughter and her grandson.
Scary, because he was always with his mom. He was always with her. He's autistic. He was never not with her.
Uneasy as she's left with endless questions and grief for her daughter, who she says was a mother of 3 who loved her kids.
Just knowing she's not here anymore, that hurts. My daughter was a beautiful girl. She lived for her kids. That's my best friend. That was my best friend.
In the quiet of that alley, the world she had tried so hard to navigate came to a sudden stop. The investigation into her final hours would reveal truth, motive, and a heartbreaking chain of events. But in that first moment, all the city knew was that a child had been found alone, and his mother had been found gone. The story of what happened next, the clues uncovered, the suspect identified, and the painful unraveling of Aniya's final hours would soon become the center of Milwaukee's attention. But before the community even learned the details, one thing was already clear. A little boy had lost the most important person in his world, and a family had lost someone irreplaceable. And the question that echoed through the city was simple, chilling, and impossible to ignore. How did everything go so wrong so fast? The moment police identified the woman found in the alley, everything shifted. What had started as a welfare call for a wandering child quickly became a race to understand what happened to 29-year-old Aniya Raymond, a mother whose life seemed to be unraveling in real time on social media. Investigators began retracing her last known movements, searching for any clue that might explain how a caring mother, known for being protective of her young son, ended up alone in a cold alley while he wandered the streets miles away. Officers pulled surveillance footage, knocked on doors, and interviewed anyone who had spoken to her in the final hours. What they found was a patchwork of moments, Aniya leaving her home carrying her phone, a brief interaction with someone in a parked vehicle, and then nothing. The trail went dark, but the digital world she left behind was speaking louder than anything else. Her Facebook activity, posts full of emotion, hints of frustration, and raw pleas for peace, became a focal point. Investigators noted the timing. A series of messages posted just hours before her disappearance. They weren't threats, and they weren't directed at anyone specific, but they carried a heaviness. It was as if Aniya was trying to say something without saying it outright, the way people do when they hope someone will read between the lines. Family members, meanwhile, were going through their own emotional storm. They were already grappling with the shock of finding out her son had been found alone, scared, silent, and unable to explain what had happened. Now they were being asked to reconstruct Aniya's private world, describing relationships, friendships, disagreements, and any sudden changes in her behavior. The more questions police asked, the more painful the answers became. A picture slowly began to form. Aniya had been under pressure, juggling motherhood, trying to maintain relationships, and carrying the weight of personal struggles that had never fully surfaced. She was someone who loved her child fiercely, someone who friends say would never willingly leave him behind. And that truth alone pushed detectives to treat her case with urgency. As police dug deeper, they located the last people who reportedly saw her alive. Some were cooperative, offering bits of information, where she said she was going, who she had contacted, what mood she seemed to be in. Others hesitated, giving vague timelines or contradictions that didn't quite fit. Detectives noticed every pause, every deflection, every attempt to shift focus. And with each interview, the tension behind the investigation grew heavier. The biggest breakthrough came when officers discovered Aniya's phone had stopped transmitting early the morning she disappeared. A sudden outage. No calls, no messages, no activity. It was a red flag. Phones don't just go silent without a reason. Investigators used the last recorded signal to narrow down her path, placing her in the vicinity where her body was eventually found. That connection, though small, shifted the investigation from speculation to certainty. Aniya didn't wander into that alley by accident. Meanwhile, the community was becoming emotionally invested. News of her son, found wandering alone in the early morning, spread quickly through Milwaukee. Parents who heard the story imagined their own children in that situation. It was unthinkable. People tried to understand how a mother could be unaccounted for hours without someone stepping in sooner. Vigils began forming online before her family even had the chance to speak publicly. Her name was already circulating, her story already touching strangers who felt the weight of it in their own hearts. As the emotional wave grew, pressure on law enforcement intensified. Reporters were asking questions. Advocates were speaking up. Her family was demanding answers. And investigators knew they were running out of time to piece together the truth before rumors and assumptions filled the gaps. Then came a development that changed the tone of the investigation completely. The discovery of a person of interest. Someone who had interacted with Aniya the night she went missing. Someone whose story didn't quite align with the timeline police had already confirmed. Investigators leaned in hard, rechecking statements, revisiting locations, analyzing digital activity. This was the moment when hidden motives started to rise to the surface. There were mentions of tension, disagreements, a relationship dynamic that may have been more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. Nothing that explicitly pointed to violence, but enough to raise serious questions. Questions that made investigators more determined to understand exactly what Aniya was facing in those final hours. Her social media posts took on new meaning. They weren't random. They weren't just venting. They were pieces of a larger emotional puzzle, fragments of a woman trying to navigate relationships, responsibilities, and her own internal battles. Family members, already shattered, struggled to reconcile the Aniya they knew with the possibility that someone in her life may have had a role in her final moments. It added a layer of heartbreak that was almost too heavy to speak about. Her son's well-being became the center of every conversation. He was safe, but forever changed. His life now held a before and after. Through all of this, the investigation was no longer just about evidence. It was about motive. It was about trust betrayed. It was about understanding how a woman who deserved protection support, and compassion could end up alone, unprotected, and silenced. As detectives closed in on their person of interest, the emotional weight on everyone connected to Aniya became almost unbearable. There was fear. Fear of the truth. Fear of what it meant. Fear of a reality no one wanted to accept. There was anger. Anger that signs were missed. Anger that she had been struggling in silence. Anger that her son witnessed the aftermath of something no child should ever see. And most of all, there was grief. Deep, unrelenting grief for a mother whose final moments were shrouded in confusion, for a little boy who would grow up with memories shaped by loss, and for a family forced to confront a truth they never imagined would touch their lives. The moment detectives released the suspect's name, the city seemed to exhale, not in relief, but in disbelief. Kevin Griffin, a man who, just days before, had blended into Aniya's circle like countless others who passed through her orbit. Nothing about him stood out in the way people expect when they imagine someone capable of taking a life. He wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in the background or a stranger with no ties.
Blake, family telling us that he had been without water, the victim in this case, for up to 2 months, and that he took those complaints to the city. Records show that he did as well. But it was an argument, prosecutors say, between the tenant and the landlord that reached a boiling point and led to 2 murders.
A single flower and a bottle of liquor perched on the porch of the home of Kevin Griffin, the memorial for Griffin's tenant, Terrence Wilder, and Aniya Raymond, who prosecutors say Griffin killed. Behind the now boarded-up door, records show police found the body of Terrence Wilder with 1 gunshot lying in his bed in the upstairs unit.
This has been my nightmare, my hell.
His family shocked Monday.
You stole something that wasn't yours to steal. Yeah, you didn't deserve that.
Prosecutors say Wilder and Griffin were arguing about leaving the back door open when Griffin says he shot him because he, quote, just lost it. Prosecutors say Aniya Raymond, who also lived there, witnessed the murder. They say he put her and her nonverbal son in his Mercedes and drove them around. Eventually, he told prosecutors she pulled a knife and mace, and he shot her in front of her son. They say he dumped her body in this alley near 41st and Hampton, and prosecutors say he told them she, quote, was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I won't be able to see my daughter grow old. I wasn't supposed to bury her. She was supposed to bury me.
Prosecutors say he then took Raymond's son back to his house, put him in her car, drove him to another location, and, quote, told the child to wait there for his mother to come get him. Police found the boy hours later. Records show Griffin was in the process of evicting Wilder, alleging he moved others in not on the lease or paying rent. Wilder complained to the city, saying he didn't have hot water for 2 months.
He was upset because Terrence called the city over.
Do you think this was retaliation for that?
Yes, I do.
City records show inspectors ordered Griffin to fix leaking faucets, fix a drain, and a porch door, which none appear to have been fixed at the time the landlord is charged with taking the lives of 2 people living above him.
He was someone who had been close enough to her to be trusted and close enough to break that trust in the most devastating way. Investigators now had a direction, a real one, and they followed it relentlessly. Phone records revealed communication between Aniya and Griffin leading up to the night she vanished. Social media posts from Aniya, written in the days before her death, suddenly felt louder. People reread them and wondered if she had been trying to say something without saying it directly. Friends whispered that she'd seemed stressed, off, or like she was carrying too much. Now, those moments mattered more than anyone realized at the time. As detectives pieced the timeline together, the story became both clearer and heavier. Griffin had been one of the last people in contact with her. His name kept appearing in digital trails, messages, locations, and moments where his presence made the puzzle pieces lock into place. He was familiar, and that familiarity had allowed him close enough that no one thought twice when Aniya said she was stepping out, close enough that no alarms went off when she didn't come home immediately. But by morning, everything had changed. When officers located Griffin, he didn't put up a dramatic fight. He didn't run or hide. Instead, he carried the weight of someone who knew what was coming and knew that there was no outrunning the consequences. The arrest was quiet, methodical, and necessary. News of the arrest spread fast. In Milwaukee, a community already mourning now had a person to hold accountable. Comment sections filled with heartbreak, confusion, and anger. Family members expressed gratitude to police, but also sorrow that nothing could bring Aniya back. Friends posted photos of her smiling, the kind of smile that reached her eyes, reminding everyone that she wasn't just a headline or a case number. She was a mother, a daughter, a woman with dreams, routines, and a heart stretched wide for her son. And speaking of her son, the heart of this tragedy, he remained the most tender part of the story. He was safe now, surrounded by relatives, given the comfort, routine, and support he desperately needed. But the questions lingered for those who loved him. How much had he seen? How much did he understand? And how would they walk him through this new world shaped by absence he couldn't yet articulate? Family members stepped into roles they never expected to fill so soon. They carried the responsibility of preserving Aniya's memory, not as a victim, but as the warm, funny, determined mother she had always been. They vowed to make sure her son grew up knowing that she loved him deeply, that she fought for him, and that her spirit lived in every decision made for his future. As for the community, the tragedy lit a conversation that stretched far beyond Milwaukee, a conversation about women who post warnings or cryptic messages online, hints about stress, fear, or unease. Too often, people scroll past, assuming everything will be okay. This time, those posts became haunting reminders that sometimes the signs are there, quietly asking to be seen. When the case entered the courtroom phase, prosecutors laid out the events with precision. Griffin faced charges that reflected the severity of what had been taken, not just a life, but the stability and safety of a young child who depended on his mother for everything. The proceedings were factual, methodical, and respectful. No theatrics, no sensationalism, just the truth laid bare. And through it all, Aniya's family remained steadfast. They attended hearings, held hands, supported each other, and made sure her voice was present even though she could no longer speak for herself. They listened to testimony, watched the legal process move forward, and carried themselves with a strength that inspired everyone who followed the case. Justice, as it often does, moved slowly, but it moved with purpose. And finally, after months of waiting, grieving, and reliving the worst day of their lives, Aniya's loved ones received what they had been fighting for: accountability. A verdict that acknowledged the truth of what happened. A confirmation that her life mattered, her story mattered, and her son's future mattered. It didn't heal the wound. It didn't erase the pain. But it provided clarity in a situation defined by heartbreak. In the aftermath, something powerful happened. Aniya's story began to echo, not just as a tragedy, but as a reminder of vigilance, empathy, and the importance of checking on the people we love. Truly checking. Listening when their tone shifts, paying attention when their posts hint at something deeper, making space for conversations that feel uncomfortable but necessary, because behind every viral headline is a human being who deserved safety, respect, and time. Today, Aniya's memory lives in the family who refuses to let her story fade, in a little boy who carries her features and her light, and in a community determined to learn from what happened. And for viewers watching right now, this is where you come in. If stories like this move you, if you believe every victim deserves to be remembered with dignity, if you want these cases to reach more people so awareness can spark change, don't let Aniya's story stop here. Like this video, share it, and subscribe for more stories that honor the lives behind the headlines. Because remembering them is the first step toward protecting others. Her story matters. Her life matters. And today, because you're here, her voice continues.